So we're going to go over how to set your preferences for Adobe InDesign. From time to time, you may lose your preferences. Computer IT may have to wipe your computer. You may have to uninstall and reinstall InDesign. So I'm going to lead you through how to set preferences for blocks in InDesign and also for the Asset Manager. We're going to click on the Block Total CMS menu. We're going to go way down here to Settings and Support. And we're going to go through each one of these tabs. Yours may look different depending on your resolution. Mine has the full words like Adobe InCopy. If your resolution is set kind of high, you might only see abbreviations like AI. So we're going to click on Adobe InCopy. Now, most sample sites, including the B, do not use any Adobe InCopy products. So we can deselect all these. And what that'll do is it'll remove options from your BLOX Total CMS menu that you're never going to use. So make sure they're all deselected. This top one you can't deselect, but that's okay. Then we're going to move to the next tab, Asset and Image Controls. And we want these top two to be selected. If anything else is selected, just deselect it. We're going to move to Asset Manager. And we can leave this one selected. We don't need any others selected. Move to the Auto Load tab, and we want this selected. Auto Load Adobe PDF Presets. What that means is if there is a preset on the server, which normally they are stored there, if your IT department decides to update it, you will automatically get that updated file when you launch InDesign. It'll automatically load into your computer. Now we're going to Child Assets. And we want these selected. Prompt for single children. What that means is normally in the Asset Manager, when you place a story, if there are more than one photo, it'll prompt you, do you want to bring in all the photos? This will prompt you even if there's only one photo. And the reason why you might want that is because let's say that it's a web type image. Maybe it's the police blotter and you have a little icon image of handcuffs that you want to use online, but you don't want that in print. This way, if you have this checked, it'll prompt you. You could tell it not to bring the photo in. If you don't have that and it comes on the page, not a big deal. You can still delete the photo and the cut line off the page. By default, usually limit placement of locked children is selected. You want to deselect that. What that means is even if somebody else is using the photo, you'll still be able to place it. Hide non-printable children. You want that selected because that will hide audio or video or things like that you couldn't possibly place in print anyway. At least you won't see them in the Asset Manager. And limit quantity of placed children. I usually just leave that at 4. That doesn't mean that you can't place more than 4 child assets. It just means that only the first 4 are going to be selected to come in. When you get the next dialog box, you could choose to bring in more. Dialogues, you should look just like this. I usually just keep these at the default. Jumps, trimming, and saving, you want these selected. Display jumps menu. Hide trims when opening documents. Hide trim text when saving. Remember, trimming is when you trim something on the page, it will show up online, but it won't show up in print. And this just makes sure that it stays hidden in print. By default, save document on activation is selected. You don't need that. That's for a different type of jump method that we have. Having that selected kind of slows you down a little bit. Keyboard shortcuts should just be the first one checked. We're not going to do anything with this, but just so you know, anything that's in the BLOX Total CMS menu can have a keyboard shortcut. This area right here is used for, let's say one person decides to make a whole bunch of keyboard shortcuts. There's a way to put your keyboard shortcuts in here and everybody gets them automatically. They can choose to load them. Menu ordering. This just moves stuff within the BLOX menu. Right now, if you go to the BLOX menu, the documents option is pretty far down. You can, right here, move documents submenu towards the top. And what it does is it moves it from somewhere way down here to up here. A little less mouse work, I guess. I wouldn't suggest changing any of these until you work with the program a little bit and get accustomed to where the menus are, and then decide if you want to move them. Pages. I probably wouldn't change anything here. I don't think any of your sites are using this. You could if you wanted to, like check these two. Page notes when closing, page notes when opening. What that does is it throws up a dialog box where you could put notes from one designer to another. So when you close a page, you could leave a note, and the other designer could also have page notes when opening, so that when they open a document, they will see that note. It's usually a couple of extra clicks, so if you're not going to use that, constantly, I would not suggest setting that. Segmenting, we're going to skip over that. Support. In your site, you probably have a similar list to this. What these are PDFs. They're little help files. And usually there's a BLOX Total CMS user guide. And if you double click those, they will open up in Adobe Acrobat. If your computer has Acrobat Reader, it would open up in Reader. If it's some kind of Mac substitute, it would open up in that. And they're just 1-page, 2-page documents on how to do things. The BLOX Total CMS user guide is more like 100 pages. So it's a big, giant PDF that's searchable. There will be times when you run into issues, and those issues might be InDesign crashed, or you're getting an error message on the screen. And while it would seem to be helpful to send us screenshots of what you see, the screenshots are very little part of what is going on. What we want is your log file. Your log file tells us what you were doing beforehand and all the details of the issue that you're running into. Right up here, this button here says Show Local User Log. And if you click on that, it will open up a Windows Explorer menu or window. If you're on a Mac, it opens up Finder, but it takes you to the location of where your log is. And this is the file that we need. It's called translate.log. If you have extensions turned off, it might just say translate. But we would want you to email that to us. Now, if you crashed and you restarted InDesign, and then you're going to grab the log, we want 2 logs. We want the translate log, but there's also another one in here called translate_BU, and that stands for backup. Every time you launch InDesign, it takes the translate log, converts it into the translate backup log, and then it starts a new fresh log. So if you crash and restart InDesign, all the information that we really want is probably going to be in the translate BU. But you can't go wrong with sending us both logs. And anytime you have an issue, if you send us a log, it's really helpful if you tell us about when you had the issue. So if you crashed at 8 p.m., just tell us the issue happened at 8 p.m. And if for some reason InDesign was running for multiple days, tell us what day it was. Which brings up another thing. You really shouldn't be running InDesign for a couple of days. You should restart InDesign every day. Not only do you get a fresh log, but you will also refresh your RAM, get any updates that might have been applied to blocks by, updated snippets or things like that. Really good idea to really not only restart InDesign, but I would suggest you restart your computer every day. And I know some computers might take a while to restart. So what I usually tell people is, as you're leaving from one day, click restart. So it's restarting after you leave, and then you just log in when you get there. Okay, so we were at the support tab. I'm going to skip one, but then I'll go back to it. I'm going to go to user interface, display domain controls. If your site has more than one domain, and domains are websites, like full websites, sometimes like the B logs into bnews.com, but then some people also log into Oswego. That would be two sites. If you want to be able to switch InDesign to see both those sites, you would display domain controls so that you could actually open up their pages too. We're going to switch back to translation options. Yours should look just like this, only we're going to click on this set pre-placed asset policy. It's going to bring up this dialog box, and by default, it'll say ignore and place asset. But we want ask each time. What that means is if a story has been placed, it'll bark at you and let you know it's been placed. That way you don't run into one person placing it on one page and then you placing it on another page and it's in the paper twice. This will at least let you know that it has been placed already. It doesn't prevent you from placing it again if you want to, and there's times you'll want to do that. If it's a photo that somebody's using on an inside page and the front page designer wants to use it as a teaser, it'll prompt you and say, hey, it's been placed, but it'll still let you place it. So that sets, once you click that, all of our preferences have been set and you can move along. So they will follow you to any computer you log into. Now we're going to set asset manager preferences. BLOX, asset manager. Going to open up the asset manager. And up here, we're going to go to preferences. So right here, it says columns. What I suggest people do is deselect anything it will let you deselect. There are three things that are mandatory: type, locked, and slug. So you can't deselect those. Now, the order that I select them in will be the order that they're in from left to right in the asset manager. And I try to pick very narrow columns on the left, because if I pick something that has a lot of information, all the other columns are way over to the right. It's just not as easy to read. So the first thing I click is placed icon. If the story has been placed, you'll see a little InDesign icon there, letting you know that it has already been placed once. And then way down here towards the bottom, placed section and page. So it tells you on what section and what page that story was placed on. Then I choose child count. So it'll tell you how many child assets are associated with the asset that you're looking at. And you're going to see a number 1 through 9 or a plus. A plus means more than 9. Then I choose depth. That's the depth of your story in inches. I also like notes preview. If somebody in the asset writes a note, you'll be able to view that note in the asset manager. And when I say they write a note, in the asset at the bottom of the print tab, there's a little notes field. So if they write anything in there, you'll be able to see it in the asset. After that, I usually check workflow, title, which is headline, and start time. Now you can click the apply button, but I tell people we put a button down here because people wanted to approve these changes. Really, all you have to do is go back to basic search and it saves it anyway. We just gave you a button to make you feel good. And now if I click reset up here, the asset manager will fill with all the stories, but the columns are in the order that I put them in. Type, lock, slug, placed icon, and we can see right here a little InDesign icon. Section and page, what section and page it was put on. Child count, depth, notes preview, workflow, title, and start time. We're going to go back to preferences. And right down here, it says include. And if you don't see that, it could be because your asset manager is more narrow or your resolution's really high. And you might see these arrows and you can choose include. We want all three of these checked. And along with those, over here, number of search results. The default is 20. I usually go to 50. That means it'll show you 50 on a page. And some people might say, well, I'd rather have 100. 100 just means your search is going to be a little bit slower. So I'd suggest 50. It's a good number. And depending on what your slug naming convention is, the B has it this way: 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit date. The default has it at 2-digit year. So you might want to change it to 4-digit year. And then there's a separator between year, month, and date. We use hyphens. And then again, we can go back to basic search. So what that include button did, it added this and it added this. And the reason those are helpful is because when we have a story that has a child asset, like this one right here, I can see has one child asset. I can click on this. I can preview the story here, but I can also preview the image that's related to the story here. And if there was any related content boxes, like if you go box or a pull quote or something like that, they would be listed down here. Another reason why you'd want this box is if I double click on this right here, it's going to place the story and going to want to bring in the photo. If I click here and click OK, it's only going to bring in that photo that I have selected. And why would that be helpful? Well, sometimes you place a story and it has like 3 photos and you're thinking, I'm only going to use 2 photos. But then later on, you have more space than you thought and you want to place the 3rd one. You could come back, click on the story, select just the photo you forgot to place, and then click OK and bring in the photo separately. Okay, so we're done setting preferences here. So I'm going to click cancel. We set all of our preferences for blocks. That's all we need to do.